honoured if you would join us.
Greetings and welcome to another episode, YouTube episode even, of Film Stories with me, Dan Cooper. This week our guest is Jenny Eagan, who's a costume designer for Knives Out, which launches today here in the UK. The film is an absolute hoot. I recommend you all to go watch it and enjoy this interview with the film's costume designer. Before we kick on to the interview, just please do, if you like the content, please do subscribe. Please do hit the notifications bell, like it and share it if you can. That would be really helpful. So enjoy the interview. Here we go. Excellent. So I'm here on the channel with Jenny Eagan, and Jenny is the costume designer for, amongst many other things, Knives Out, the new Rian Johnson film, which is in cinemas in Friday. So Jenny, welcome.
Thank you. I'm excited.
Could you, just tell us really briefly, what does it sounds pretty self-explanatory, but what does a costume designer do?
Well, exactly. That's always people kind of get confused because we, although fashion is always a part of what we do, we are creating a character, or or taking a script that a director like Rian so creatively spent time in writing and curating, and in his mind, depending on the script, has very key explanations to who that character is, and we bring that to life through clothing and through pieces. It could be jewelry or anything that kind of touches on who that person might be, the character and not the actor. And so you bring that to life and tell a little bit of story and give the audience, from the beginning, an audience member will know, oh, I know who that person is, based on whether it be socioeconomic or whatever about a character, but you can settle in knowing who that person is in the story we're going to tell with her or him, hopefully.
And what is?
I do it right.
Yeah. What is your process? I mean, I've read a little bit about your process in previous films. I read that for Stephen McQueen's Widows, you went and scouted out the real life neighborhoods in Chicago where the characters are from, to see what people were wearing. With the characters in this movie being largely from a background of privilege, and maybe the film existing in a slightly more kind of heightened reality, how did that change your approach?
Well, I think, and everything always too, with the script, some of those details there, or the conversation is there with the director to at least set you on your way, to give you clues or ideas about things they're thinking of that drives the script in a certain direction. And, it is still always, where is it set, and what is the background of the people. And so if you're there, for instance, we were in Boston area, and so you look around. I mean, the architecture tells you a lot about, a person too. I'm sorry about that. I believe that the house itself, at times lends way to who the character is. And then as a matriarch or a patriarch of a family, like Trombley was, what that bleeds down into the children that he might have raised, and what they're like. So, hopefully the script really kind of gives you all the basics that you need, and then you start going out, whether it be on your feet, whether it be researching books. Sometimes you find a book that could be any period of time, 1970s, and the color palette might speak to you and inspire you in a different way, not necessarily the actual garments or the people per se, but color palette or shapes, or for instance, Jamie Lee Curtis was all in one color, and that color blocking really spoke to me about who she was and the strength. Yeah. So it comes from various places. It's just getting out there and having the freedom, especially now with internet and everything. It's just a plethora, and different things inspire you for different reasons. Definitely starting to place.
Does the internet make it? I mean, obviously, it makes it easier because you have such a wealth of resources at your fingertips. But by the same measure, do you find a lot of designers are kind of using the same leading towards the same sites and resources?
You do, and or what's even that happens, or what's even more frustrating is because I search something, it wants to take me there, and it won't allow me all the time to, find something a little bit different or, inspire me. I'll go down some different thought process, and it'll lead me back to what I've already seen. So that can become incredibly frustrating. And then, I think it's interesting whether or not we use the same research. It depends if we're in LA or different parts of the city, even if it's the library, we all tend to find the same books or similar books from artists or photographers or things.
Mm-hmm.
But it's how you interpret it. I think everybody interprets it a little bit different. It's like any art. The way I see it, what I see in that photograph that inspires me maybe inspires somebody else a little bit differently. So I think it's interesting that we use all of the same things, but I think it's how we all interpret them also very differently.
Yeah.
Which can be, that's fun too. It's fun to see other people and, my colleagues, that we all share things as well. Looking for something. That's a nice thing too, because you can ask them, have you seen something? I'm looking for something like this, and it leads you down a different path that you didn't know or weren't aware of. And
so throughout the process, web research, libraries, books, scouting, physical scouting, in a kind of non-spoilery way, what did you find at the end of the process? What did you think you learned about the characters or about the world that maybe you didn't know at the start?
Well, it's interesting. I think the best part of my job, I like to say, is you do all this research and you set a character in your mind, or you give a direction, and then when you meet an actor, whether you've worked with them before or it's the first time or the first conversation to when they actually come to you in that room,
mm-hmm.
It's what you learn in that moment, because again, their interpretation of something is very different than yours, or what they see, and you have to be willing to let a little bit of that go, depending on the period and the movie and exactly what we're doing.
Yeah.
But being able to collaborate so freely and openly and open yourself up and not get caught up and stuck. And I think that is what, for this one in particular, it was just, there were so many people I hadn't worked with. I had worked with Daniel before and had such a lovely time. He's, so wonderful to work with, but everybody approaches every job quite differently. And so getting to know the person, the actor that comes in to play that part, and what they've chosen to focus on, or what's important to them, or what their view is, you learn just so much about people. If you can allow your brain to open up and really, because what we are is we're creating people and characters. So you have to open your brain, and that's what gets so fascinating, where I feel like I meet new people all the time.
Yeah, that's interesting. And I suppose with this film's like marvelous ensemble, it was kind of getting to do that on steroids.
Exactly. But I think that's also different. I think people, for instance, years ago I was an assistant. I worked on Iron Man 2, and getting to see, who Robert Downey Jr. plays. For instance,
mm-hmm.
That character, what he made that character. So you could say something on paper, you might know something, but what that actor brings to that character speaks volumes. And that's what helps, that's always what informs me too, because I could have a direction in my mind and they come in the room and it just changes immediately.
Right.
Because you get an essence and an aura of who that person is or who they've decided to create. And so it helps so much to just be in there and spend the time and open yourself up.
You mentioned Daniel Craig. In terms of his costume, how did you approach that? Because he's this gentleman sleuth. He has this. He's such a great character. He's got this kind of slight sense of self-importance. So he reminded me of a peacock in a way. He's kind of strutting around, but at the same time, there's something. He plays it so well. There's just something faintly ridiculous about him as well.
That's the fun part too. And I think, when Ryan and I first talked, it was really about him and what he had in his mind for that character, which was a little bit more even pushed farther, the Southern gentleman, the white linen suit,
mm-hmm.
Even being much bigger. And then you have to sort of say, because I knew him and we also know what kind of actor he is and character he is, you have to pull back sometimes and let them, with that voice that he created, that person.
Mm-hmm.
So you can't let the clothes wear them. It's got to be. So it kind of shifted in these kind of older world, timeless, yet kind of felt, he wasn't of this time period, and the tweeds, and then giving him, whether it be the floral tie, the pocket square, or
Yeah.
just pushing those little things, those little tweaks, the suspenders, to give him that old world and aging it down a little bit so it wasn't so perfect, that there was character in there and you wanted to know more about who he was. Why was he wearing this? Who is this person? And I think it's just taking, stepping back and saying, what's too much? How can we pare this down, but just push it a little bit. And it's difficult to do. And if you can do it well and it plays well, it just kind of becomes a part of them. And you don't recognize it being a costume anymore. And you think this person's how they dress. And that's a difficult part to get to. But when you do, it just falls so seamlessly. Sometimes you have these intentions of doing something grander, and you might try a coat on from a charity shop and think, well, that's just perfect.
Mm-hmm.
Just the way it falls, the way they put it on and the way they move in it, the way they turn and put their hands in the pockets or something that they do. You have to pay attention to those things very closely all the time when you're fitting, especially. So it just all happens kind of organically, really. Yeah. Sometimes it's all planned out and it has to be made, and but if you give it space, again, like I said, I keep repeating myself, but they're going to give you back. They're going to continue to give you more and inform the costume so much more.
So Daniel Craig's 007, he's James Bond. One of the things he's famous for as an actor is having an iconic look and wearing iconic costumes. And does that ever enter your process, as in other films that an actor may have done where they've looked this way or looked that way, or is that something that you banish completely from your process?
Well, obviously it's there, and you have to think about it. You can't let it go, and you don't ever want to say I'm not going to do that, because that's just been done for so long. I mean, you take it into consideration, and a lot of times they want to make themselves somebody else. I want to go completely. This is not something Daniel said, but at times people will say, I want to be completely opposite of that. I want to create a new person and something else. And so, but you do think about it, because this character is completely different for me than anything he's played, and especially like the Bond. So what can I aesthetically do that sets it apart, but without being so drastic? But yes, those do come into, especially like an iconic character like James Bond or something like that. I mean, you don't want to, but the audience doesn't need to see him in this movie. They are, I think, because they know him from that. But I think this movie was really fun in the sense that we got to separate him from that. And that the character that he played, the choices that he made, obviously did that very well.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's kind of easy to do. So it depends on the project and what character you're making. If it's easy to do, if it's something you consciously have to work against.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because he does wear clothes so fantastically. He dresses wonderfully. He's got great style personally. So you don't want to take that away and make it awful, but you want to give it something that is unexpected, I think.
Yes. Yeah. So there you go. We'll have more from Jenny in the next episode. If you want more film stories in the meantime, be sure to go and check out our print magazines. That's the Excellent Film Stories magazine and Film Stories Junior, which is written by youngsters for youngsters. You can find details of how to get them, and there's an offer at the moment in terms of a kind of buy one get one free physical and digital combo on our website filmstories.co.uk, where you can also find news stories every day and long form writing. On top of that, you can follow us on Twitter at Film Stories Pod, Facebook at Film Stories Online, or you can listen to the excellent podcast that we have on a podcast downloader of your choice. I'm going to leave you here then, and I'll see you back here soon with more Film Stories. Take care.